Hello, thank you again for joining us today. My name is Nathan Rolfe. I'm the president of the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces and your host for this segment. On behalf of the Tortora Brayda Institute and the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces, I would like to welcome you to this month's episode of our Cyber Workforce Series, where we speak with cyber professionals about their careers and journeys to help inform others on the diversity of paths within the cybersecurity industry, and hopefully support you, the listener, on your own personal cyber career journey. Before we meet this month's guests, I would like to share a little bit about the two organizations making this series possible, the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces and the Tortora Brayda Institute. The Association of U.S. Cyber Forces is a nonprofit professional association that provides the voice for cyber professionals who serve in the military, government agencies, industry, and academia on specific cyber issues impacting national security. AUSCF is an advocate for positive change to policies and programs from the local to national that better serve our membership, develop and expand the cyber workforce, proactively address cyberspace threats, and help minimize gaps between the private and public sector cybersecurity efforts. If you would like to learn more or join AUSCF, please visit our website at www.auscf.org. The Tortora Brayda Institute is a nonpartisan public benefit institute focused on the convergence of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. As these technologies increasingly shape economies, governance, and public trust, their role is to bring together leaders across industry, government, and academia to develop the frameworks, partnerships, and talent needed to ensure they are adopted responsibly, securely, and with accountability. Through their think tank for partnerships in AI and cybersecurity, they convene global experts to address one of the most urgent challenges of our time: how to build systems that are not only innovative, but trustworthy, resilient, and aligned with social benefit. A critical part of that challenge is workforce readiness. As AI and cybersecurity continue to reshape industries and expand both opportunity and risk, the need for a workforce that is not only skilled, but prepared to operate in an environment defined by complexity, accountability, and digital risk has never been greater. If you are not currently a member of the Institute, we invite you to visit their website to learn more on how you can engage and contribute to this work. The Cyber Workforce Series is part of the broader effort to close that gap, bringing together leaders to explore not just skills, but pathways, expectations, and the evolving standards of professional responsibility in this space. AUSCF and TBI are excited to partner here because through this series and our broader work, we are focused on building a more prepared, more accountable, and more resilient workforce in the future. During today's discussion, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat, and as time allows, we will attempt to weave in answers and responses to those questions. And your questions and feedback also help directly shape this and our future events. Today's guest is Mace Moesner. John Mace Moesner is a distinguished cyber warfare executive and retired U.S. Air Force colonel with over 30 years of experience spanning elite offensive cyber, defensive cyber, and cyber intelligence disciplines. He currently serves as the technical executive director for the cyber line of business at CACI International, where he acts as the senior technical advisor shaping cyber strategy, driving innovation and advanced research, and translating complex capabilities into mission-critical solutions. Prior to this role, Mace co-founded Singularity Cyber LLC, providing high-level cyberspace operations and information warfare consulting to national security clients, building upon a 29-year active-duty military career. During his military tenure, Mace held multiple high-impact leadership positions at the vanguard of joint cyber operations, including serving at the Pentagon as the Director of Cyber Effects Division at Headquarters Air Force, and commanding the 7th Intelligence Squadron. He successfully coordinated over 2,800 missions and directed the comprehensive defense of the global Air Force network. A rare blend of strategic leader and deep technical operator, Mace is a graduate of NSA's prestigious Computer Network Operations Development Program and Remote Interactive Operator Training. A published RAND Corporation researcher on cyber warfare design and information warfare, he holds a master's in computer science, among several other degrees, from the Air Force Institute of Technology, and also holds CISSP and CEH certifications. Mace, that was a mouthful, but welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, Nathan. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right, let's start where all things start, at the beginning. Back in the day before cyber was called cyber. So you started off early in your career with a computer science degree. So was this path that you went on with cyber operations, was that always your desired career path? And what got you initially attracted to this world?
Yeah, that's a great question. Back when we first started, we didn't have a thing called cyber. It was more, communications. I was in Air Force. I was an enlisted communications airman, and opportunity came up. I had already started some classes in computer science, and ended up taking night school and just pursuing a full degree. Eventually, working in comm squadrons, base level communications, and that kind of thing. And eventually, there's a lot more computers than communications, and now it became a lot more computer related, and eventually we kind of migrated into what we now call cyber operations.
That's interesting. That concept of, I think a lot of people forget, computers started out as just a means of communication. What we use for them every single day now, it's not how it used to be. It was just a mechanism of basically producing some data, just communicating with each other. How much has it changed? Like, how have you adapted to that technology shift over the years? Because the use case has definitely changed since you started.
I think that's a great. Yeah, I think the use cases have changed, but I think that the underlying technology hasn't. TCP/IP really hasn't changed that much in the past 20, 30 years. ARPANET, created the internet, and the internet, the way we use, client servers. The foundations are still the same, but like you said, it's how we use it. Just like any other tool, it's how we use that tool, and we're finding new ways of using that tool all the time, right?
All right. So you built a bulk of your cyber career within the Air Force. You've got 29 years within active duty. So thank you, first of all, for your service in that regard. But that's an awesome span to be working in this area. During your time in the Air Force is really when the military as a whole, and especially the Air Force specifically, really started to embrace the concept of cyber warfare and actually recognize this as a battle-space domain. Can you talk a little bit about how your personal career path developed as the military also evolved in this warfighting discipline alongside that?
Yeah, sure. We eventually moved from, like you said, communications. Back in the day, we used to, when we were part of the Army Air Corps, we were part of the Signal Corps, right? And so it's all about communications. We evolved into introducing a lot more communications and computer technologies, and then using computers to do other things than information exchange. So it was around, I don't know, 1998, 99. There was a paper called the Four Principles of Information Warfare or something like that in the Air Force. And so the Air Force started exploring, okay, what does it mean to do computer, at the time they call it computer network operations, right? And the concepts of computer network attack, computer network defense, and computer network operations, what we call DOTN operations now, were nascent. They weren't even, we didn't actually do a lot of, CNA in the beginning, but the thought or the concepts of computer network attack complemented what we were doing, the early days of the AFCERT, doing initial computer network defense, right? And I want to say, originally the Air Force was at the forefront. We had a thing called network. We evolved from CNO to network warfare, and it became a little bit more cerebral. What is the art of the possible? What is the art of the reasonable? We all seen movies like, back then, The Matrix or even War Games or whatever, but some of it is kind of, a lot of hand waving, right? So there was a lot of exploration in the early days. Okay, theoretically, what can we do with computers? Can we use it to deny, destroy, disrupt, degrade, an adversary's information systems? And so there was a lot of exploration. There was a lot of trial and error, and sometimes more error than trial, but eventually, it started to take root. We started working with a lot of the other services. Early days we had before Cyber Command, there was JFCC NW, Joint Force Component Command for Network Warfare. At Stratcom, very small organization. It started with I think maybe 50 people when it first started, and then started eventually. Grew or evolved into we have now Cyber Command now, right? And so it was interesting times, right?
I remember those early days of JFCCNW and that growth. It was definitely interesting times. You talked a little bit about the different aspects of essentially computer network operations, cyber, whatever you want to call it. And you've, as we heard from your bio, you've been in both the offensive side, the defensive side, and even in the intelligence support side. Do you have a personal preference on
Sure.
which aspect that you actually enjoy the most?
Oh, I kind of like it all. I try to, round out my career. I get, most of my career, I tell people I joined the Air Force to see the world and ended up spending 4 assignments at Fort Meade and then 4 assignments down in San Antonio working with AF Cyber, or even the predecessor to AF Cyber. So I didn't get to see much of the world except maybe one deployment to Iraq. But, we did, yeah, I mean, we did a lot of um, interesting operations early on.
Fair enough. I don't want to get too much into sensitivity and that.
Yeah,
If you,
I'm thinking about what I can say and what I can't say, and I blew a neuron there. I'm like, I can't
that's
say
fine.
that. No.
Yeah, and I think both of us kind of grew up in those early days of cyber operations in the military, and it was definitely very hush hush and secret on those regards. Certainly not what we see today, where you can go pick up a book that talks about a named operation or anything else that Cybercom is doing. So if there's definitely different skill sets involved in the different aspects, whether it's defensive, offensive, the cyber intelligence piece, which is an area that we probably don't discuss enough on this program, and certainly some overlap. If you could take a look today now at where the state of the art has evolved to, and you were looking at someone that was going into a career like yours, where they would be able to touch all of them, is there a certain aspect that you would suggest they start with first? Better to be a defender before you're an attacker, or other way around, or things like that?
There's a lot of debate on that. Some people say that you should be a good OCO person, offensive person. You need to understand defense, and to be defense, you need to understand the mind of the adversary. I think if you have a well-rounded career, going to your previous question, you do a little bit of OCO, a little bit of Doden ops. Even the Doden ops, understanding just the fundamentals, I think is fundamental, right? Because you have to understand the technology, right? So you're if you work through your career, you'll get a different perspective. Where you stand is where you sit. So if you start off as an operator, a C&D person or a defensive person, that's great. If you start as an offensive person, that's great. If you're working, on the intel, the information exploitation, that's great. As long as you don't, my humble opinion, as long as you don't stovepipe. Early on in your career, at least for the cyber force, you want to just become a technical expert, right? And then you can start doing, let's do a little bit of a slice of C&D, let's do a slice of OCO, let's do a slice of, staff officership, right? A little bit of everything, but don't get so parochial or too constrained, I think, would be my advice.
As a leader within the Air Force, especially multiple different echelons and organizational structures, is that something that you try to instill in your troops as well, that kind of diversification of skill sets?
We do. So, one of the great things, about the Air Force is that we have our personnel center, and we have some of our best and brightest that are working to actually kind of guide people's career. They came up. They came up with a great career pyramid, and so they kind of helped us map out and said, hey, if you want to do this, you want to do C&D, here are the kind of assignments that you want to do. Those DCO. If you want to do offensive, here are the places that you can do offensive, and they're very open about it, right? And we kind of know which are the units that do which different missions, functions, and tasks, and so I think it's one of the great things is that having that career pyramid, and then having those folks at the personnel center that are kind of being the stewards, so that you can focus on the mission, right? So you focus on the mission, they help you worry about your career, and then they can kind of guide you to your next steps, of course, with your inputs, but yeah.
So that's great advice for anyone that's serving in uniform, because you actually have that benefit of those career managers that are, in theory, out there looking out for you and your career. You've transitioned out of uniform. You're in the civilian world. Do you find that it's a different story in trying to make sure that folks can get diversification of their skill set?
It's up to you where you want to. If you don't want to take my advice and you want to say, hey, I want to do DCO, all the power to you. You become a DCO, samurai. That'd be perfect, right? But one of the things that the DoD or the DOW has helped out is with the 8140, talking about the DCWF, the Defense Cyber Workforce. And they kind of plotted out, here are the different areas, here are the different work roles. I think we got like 74 different work roles in these 7 or 6 7 different kind of elements, and you can kind of explore your way through these different elements on what you think you can do. Going back to your question, on the civilian side of the house, we use that as well, right? So I work in as a defense contractor in CACI, and so we use that as part of our workforce. The contracts that we support are mandated to follow the DCWF, right? And so at the same time, our workforce is not mirrored one-to-one to the 8140 skill sets and work roles, but it's very close, right? And why do we do that? It's so that we can have that communication and we can transition. I can plug and play one of my contractors into your organization, and 99% of the time they're going to be just as, or maybe even more qualified in some cases, in that other DCWF work role.
The transition from the DoD to 8140 from the previous very closed matrix in 8570 of just have some certs was actually I think, and especially from an AUSCF perspective, a evolutionary step forward in how the workforce is managed. 8140 really looks at certifications or education or experience and combinations thereof, which is a huge win. From your perspective, as you've led airmen in the field and operating, and as you're operating in the civilian side, do you find that one of those 3 areas still carries more weight than others that folks should focus on?
I think, again, I think the right answer is balance. The DOWCIO had a good DCWF summit a couple months ago, and we just talked about that, right? And again, where you stand is where you sit. If you're in academia, you're going to lean towards, I think you need to have that academic foundation, right? If you're more into certifications and you want to do brass tacks and just understand the tactical and technical pieces, you're going to lean towards certification. And other people are saying, hey, certifications in academia are great, but it's useless without experience, right? So you need to have that experience, right? So I think, looking at that triangle, I think you need a little bit of everything. And what do I prefer? I will tell you from my perspective, which doesn't always work for everybody else, is that, I had a very good, solid computer science background at McKendree, and didn't realize at the time there was a lot of classes that I took. I'm like, why am I taking this class? Why am I taking this algorithm class? And AFIT, the same thing. Why am I taking this operating systems class? The things that I learned there, I'm still using today, 20, 30 years later. So having that foundation academic background, I think, is good. And I'll caveat that, though. Throughout my career, though, one time I had, I don't know, like a dozen different certifications when I was younger. I think the certifications are just as important too, because what they hold you accountable to is a standard, right? You have to test, right? You have to pass those tests. Sometimes 70%, 80% to get those certification, and then it becomes okay. It's kind of a badge of honor. I did that. Finally, after a couple tenths, got the Cisco certification, right? And then you appreciate it. Appreciate how much you actually know, right? Because you've been graded, right? And so then you take that and you apply it to your job, and you slowly gain experience. So long way around the barn is I think you need to have all 3.
I want to dive a little bit into each of those 3 then, just because some of the comments that you made. So certifications is a big one. The mindset in this work in this community used to be, if you don't have a certification, then you're not useful. I think we still see that to a degree, and there's certainly folks out there that are collectors of certifications. Just looking for letters to put behind their name and that kind of situation. Yeah. Do you find that in general, certifications actually provide useful skills, or is there still a big community out there that's just doing the boot camp, taking the test, and getting the piece of paper?
Well, I think they do. I think most certifications, because they're accredited, I think it's hard to, like I mentioned, I had a lot of certifications, and I got a lot of certification. Some of the certifications I didn't get right off the bat because I didn't know the material. You have to be a relative expert to pass those tests. And a lot of these certifications, at least the ones in 81 that they're listed in 8140, they're not no joke, right? They're not easy. They're most of them are very, very technical. So you have to have those skills. I don't think there's a way you can make it till you fake it in those certifications, right? It is definitely you definitely have to have those actually hands-on skills to pass those certifications, right? But
We've
to your
certainly
point,
seen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry, but to your point about the the people that do collect certifications, I think it's okay to an extent as long as you're applying it, right? Because you have to use those skills because they're going to atrophy. You're going to have to use those skills in the field, and then you can say, "Oh, I took I finally took that I took that AWS cloud engineer thing. Now I'm actually doing cloud work, with Amazon, and so now I can." Back up my certification with my 2-3 years of experience, right? I think that's where it counts.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a shift in the industry as well. Like you go back to some of my certifications I
Mm-hmm.
have 15 plus years ago.
Right.
I still have them because I'm grandfathered, but I
Mm.
guarantee the knowledge I picked up back then is not nearly as relevant today. And so the idea of
Mm.
continuing education credits and building up or retaking tests, I think has helped change that mindset a little bit. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen a positive or negative in that shift?
I think it's been a pause. I think in general the community is looking at it as a positive, right? Because they're realizing it's kind of the certifications is kind of an equalizer, right? You don't have to have just the academic background. And again, I want to say you probably should have an academic background, but you don't need to in a lot of cases. Here in Anne Arundel County, you can get a 2-year degree in computer science, and a lot of the courses that you take are actually one right after another, an accreditation of taking the CCNA or taking a particular certification, or the CompTIA A plus, Security Plus, and that kind of. And sometimes to the extent to like getting like the GIAC GSEC certification, and that's how they run their curriculum, right? It's they pepper it with a lot of the foundational knowledge, but a lot of it is also the certifications built in because they're valuable, I think, right?
Well, if you can get double credit, why not take it, right? You can get your college credit and get the
Exactly.
certification. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Circling back around on the academic piece, since we're talking about it, you mentioned in both your bachelor's and your master's programs, you were kind of questioning, hey, why am I taking these classes? These don't make sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
but the value was seen later on. We've had conversations on these shows with there's a lot of soft skills and a lot of other not directly technical applicable skills and classes that may be actually very beneficial to folks working in the cyber career field. Is there anything
Yeah.
particular that you've seen or that you would recommend in terms of different skill sets or different exposures that you look for in your workforce?
Yeah, I just had a significant emotional event when you said that. Technical writing, I had that in my undergrad and my master's program. I didn't appreciate that at all. I'm like, why am I writing? I'm talking to computers. Computers don't care what I write. Having what I find is out in the career force is that people that are very technical also don't have basic fundamental uh, English or language skills. They can't write lots of times. I'm being um, I might sound a little bit harsh here, but there's a lot of people that can't seem to put a complete sentence together when they're writing a report. And so when they put the report out about an incident, response, right, which is important, like when we're talking about, victim notification or anything like this, you got to be able to explain what happened in taking the technical terms and converting it into English, right? And so technical writing is just one of those things that I kind of glossed over that I really wish I'd pay attention more. But School of Hard Knocks, you learn to get better, and you get better through practice, right?
All right. Anything else besides technical writing, or is that probably your big one? That's
That was
the
the big
trigger
one.
warning that you had.
The trigger warning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Experience was the other piece of that triad, certainly coming out of the 8140. And this could be challenging for a lot of people coming out of school. They're trying to get into the workforce and they're looking for a couple years experience already. Having come from a military background, do you have any recommendation one way or another for individuals that are looking to expand and build that experience of potentially joining the military, either active or in a reserve component?
Okay. I was going to say on the civilian side of the house, I know we have a lot of internship programs, and I want to say that the Department of War has started an apprenticeship program, right? And so there are entry level ways and methods for sessions. and once you come in, if you're in the military, once you come in, we have initial skills training that is some of the best in the world, and then when you get to your assignment, you have that mission qualification training on your specific quote unquote cyber weapon system. So I think there's a lot of good initial opportunities at the entry level, both on the military side and the civilian side. And the civilian side, I think we're recognizing we need to make it easier for folks to come in, and so they have like the apprenticeship program and the different internship programs, and they have I forgot what it's called. There's a thing where you can go between the services. Meaning, if I start off as an Air Force civilian, I can go to the Army or the Navy, or sometimes even like working at DHS or other federal agencies that have similar needs. And I forgot what the program is called, but there's opportunities.
You mentioned internships and apprenticeships. Sounds like that's a lot focused on as a government civilian. Are you seeing in the industry side of the house a lot more of those opportunities coming up? I know in the defense contracting, they tend to only have jobs for what they have contracts for, but are any of them investing in their future?
We do. So like right now we have at the company I'm at, we have over 200 interns just for the summer, right? And that's been pretty awesome to have so many people fresh out of college, or even some who are still in college, to see what we do and then see how what they're doing applies to the real world, working, trying to relay the importance of mission, working with the operational customer, what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think there's plenty of opportunities like that in the civilian side as well.
All right. I'll talk a little bit about you again for a minute. So you've, as we mentioned, you've been around for a little while in doing this. Your career started, I'm not trying to date you too much, but a few decades ago, and you've continued to evolve it. I mean, you've seen really the World Wide Web kind of come into proliferation around the world. Advent of cloud computing all the way up to AI today, and becoming the flavor of the day for new technology. How do you personally keep yourself current as technology continues to evolve? Do you have any kind of go-to like blogs or learning courses or anything else that you kind of use as a primary means of staying up to date?
That's a great question. I think one of the more technology changes so fast. And a good example is, before February, if you weren't paying attention, nobody knew what a Claude was beforehand, right? And even if you take computer science courses now, you might not have some courses on Claude or Anthropic, or they might even talk about. They're still talking about ChatGPT from a couple of years ago, right? And if they are doing that, they're already behind the power curve, right? So I think, oh man, what was the question? I'm sorry.
How do you keep up on things?
How do you keep
is there
up
anything that you have a personal go-to for staying current?
Yeah, you have to stay current. That was my point. Yeah, you have to stay current. There's a lot of good on LinkedIn. It has been really good at advertising different blogs and different websites. And anytime I have, long story short is I have a kind of a threat intel platform. It's a very loose platform of agents that go out and scrape the internet for different sources. Right off the bat, there's a lot of, I can't recall a lot of the names, but there's a lot of federal computer related or cyber related information sources. And quite honestly, this is going to sound weird, like Wired magazine is very, very specific to what we do. Dark reading is also a good place. There's usually probably a good 20 different articles a day that you can just start going down the rabbit hole. And the Army Cyber Institute produces the Cyber Defense Review, which can be a little bit intimidating because it's at the next level. It's very high, usually very strategic level thinking. But once a quarter, they produce some pretty amazing articles from some of the best folks in our top tier in our career field. But also, I read the Washington Post on a daily basis. I read the Wall Street Journal on a regular basis. I read the New York Times on a regular basis. they've got a lot of good technical journalists that are kind of keeping the pulse on national security and cyber and what's going on, as well as what's going on in technology, what's going on with open AI or Anthropic, and what's really got the technical pulse of the country. A lot of mainstream, which is kind of counterintuitive, but there's a lot of mainstream media that are really good at, as I said before, keeping a good pulse on what's going on in technology.
All right. We are amazingly, this went by quick as they always do, and hitting towards the end of our time here. I want to ask you one last question that I try and ask all of our guests. If you could go back to the beginning of your career and change something, what would that be and why?
What would I change? I remember you had asked me this before, and I would say, this is going to sound flippant, but I would say nothing. I think a lot of what we've done is evolutionary, right? And so you would have to be really, really prescient about what was going on. But I think, at least in the Air Force, I think we had a good leadership team at all different levels in our career field. We had a very large career field, but we had a lot of folks that were kind of watching out for us. I mentioned the personnel center, but at the wing level, the group level, the squadron level, down at the NCO level, we had a lot of folks that were looking out for you as a person, as an individual, as a career airman. What would I change? I wouldn't. There's nothing that I would change. I think that there's no way to kind of be predictive of what's going out there, but just enjoying the ride as it goes, I guess.
Fair enough. I appreciate that answer. Hey, Mace, we're going to have to close up. I want to say thank you again for taking the time to share your experience with us and the community. As if it's okay with you, I'd like to go ahead and put your LinkedIn address up for anyone that is watching that may want to reach out and get in touch with you, maybe as just ask follow-on questions or look for a mentor as well.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Awesome.
we'll take
Thanks
care.
for the
We'll
invite.
take care of putting that up. So again, thank you so much for everyone that's watching, listening to our discussion today, or on the recording later on. I want to thank you for joining us as well. Again, today's discussion will be posted and available via Tortora Brayda and AUSCF's websites and YouTube channels. The Tortora Brayda Institute and Association of U.S. Cyber Forces, we are committed to reshaping and empowering the diverse collaboration and developing the cyber workforce. You, the listener, are the reason why we do what we do. So we're hoping that today's conversation has helped you on your own personal cyber career professional development path. And on behalf of Tortora Brayda and AUSCF, I want to say thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us for the next Cyber Workforce series discussion. Thanks again.